We are in a series right now we're calling the Master's Degree. We're looking specifically at how Jesus trained the disciples to be leaders. It's well documented that Jesus, when he showed up on earth, that he made time for a variety of different kinds of people. It made him very unique. Jesus transcended the culture that he was born into. He transcended the social structures and even the social pressures of the day. You'll see the more you dig into the context of the culture that Jesus was born into, you'll see how defiant he was of those cultures in order to elevate the value of the individual. And so you'll see Jesus not only spend time with a rich young ruler, he spent time with a man blind since birth. You see, Jesus was instrumental in all dimensions of healing. Not only did he heal people who were unable to walk or see or hear, but he healed a woman who was emotionally damaged from broken relationship after broken relationship. He healed a woman with a issue of blood, a hemorrhaging issue that caused her not only to suffer physically, but to suffer socially, spiritually, emotionally, and he dealt with all of it. It's the beauty of Jesus. And we would do well to copy that. We would do well to learn from that and to live our lives with that ethos. But at the same time, we also see that Jesus not only spent time touching a variety of people, but he invested himself in the leaders that would take his work and carry it on. That's important to note because you don't want your work to die with you. The effectiveness of your life isn't just in what you accomplish, but what you set into motion. So Jesus accomplished things in his lifetime, but he set things into motion that would continue beyond his lifetime. We should do that. You and I should think that way. So you should be executing your projects, but you should also be developing people around you. And so we see how Jesus did this, and we're learning not only how we should lead, but how we should follow. We've been in Mark 1, 2, and 3. Mark chapter 1, we learned about change. Jesus says to the disciples, fishermen, put down your nets and follow me. Put down your identity, how you see yourself and how everybody sees you, and come follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. And we see the process of change. Change is you're going in a normal life, all of a sudden things change, and the change is disorienting. And that disorientation doesn't feel like development, so we choose an off-ramp. We want an off-ramp. Get me out of here. This can't be good. It feels so bad. And yet the disorientation is part of change. And if you'll stay in there and you'll pray, process, and persevere, and you won't quit, or you won't choose denial, these off-ramps to give you a temporary relief, stay in the disorientation. And if you keep handling it right, and your pain threshold can handle it, eventually it'll turn into orientation. You ask the right questions, you get some answers. You find out where you have answers and where you still have ambiguity, but you end up coming to some peace and some strength and some maturity, and you get your orientation into a new normal, and then guess what? You do it again. That's growth, is constant iterations of change. And the leaders that God uses are people that aren't afraid of change. In fact, they've learned to value it. So we looked at that in Mark 1. Mark 2, we look at the disorientation the disciples had when Jesus started calling a tax collector, who was the one that we would all be unified in our distaste and distrust of a tax collector. We don't like this person. And yet Jesus is starting this process of actually teaching them how to heal and be unified despite their differences. But it was disorienting. I heard a quote this week. So good. I wish I could remember who said it, and I'd like to give them credit, but because I can't remember, well, I'll just give myself credit for it. It's actually called plagiarism. Not supposed to do that. But the quote was this. They said, you know that you're making God into your image when he happens to hate all the same people you do. That's what the disciples were doing. So Jesus pulls the one that they hate, and they would assume that God would have hated too, and he pulls them in. But it's what we talked about last week. All of the gospel, the concepts of the gospel manifest in community. Unity doesn't happen with content, it happens in community. I mean, you got to say the right things, but it only happens, like healing happens when you add people into the mix. So Jesus pulls a microcosm of their entire community in a group of 12, and he starts something that he wants to spread, but it starts the healing and the unity and the transformation happens in the micro community that then ends up going to the ends of the earth. We're gonna go back to Mark chapter 3 today because I wanna look at something else. We're gonna go back to the same text we looked at, but we're gonna look at it from a different angle. I wanna bring up verse 7 of Mark 3 real quick, just so we have our orientation around what's going on here. It says in verse 7, Jesus went out to the lake with his disciples and a large crowd followed him. I say that because just imagine a large crowd. If you're in the same room with me right now, we have a large crowd. So just imagine a bunch of people like this. A large crowd of people followed him. Look at this. And they came from all over. This is the same text where we see, remember when Jesus uses a boat as a stage because there's so many people that said the crowd was gonna crush him. It was so big. So he's teaching from a boat. That's what's going on. So just imagine a whole bunch of people. And they're all following Jesus. And it says in verse 13, afterward, Jesus went up on a mountain and he called out the ones that he wanted to go with him. And they came to him. And then he appointed 12 of them and called them his apostles. And they were to accompany him and he would send them out to preach, giving them authority to cast out demons. So there's a bunch of people and Jesus looks at this crowd. Imagine, this is not hard to imagine if you're here. Look at this. All these people here, imagine Jesus going, you, no, not you, you, and he goes to 12. He's like, that's it, 12. This message is for everybody who didn't get picked. Have you ever not gotten picked? You ever not been picked? They're picking up teams. Take him. You're over there like. I'll take him. And then you don't get picked. You're standing there with what's left of your pride. You're like, I got next. Ever not gotten picked? When I moved to Columbus, my family and I moved here to start one church, I was 30 years old. I put my resume in all over this town. Probably y'all's companies. Nobody picked me. I couldn't get a call back. Do you understand how hard I was working to get a job? Very hard. I had a baby and a wife. They both like a roof over their head and food, as do I. Nobody would call me back. I'm calling to talk to HR folks. I'm trying every job. No call, not one single call back. So I wanted to work the front desk at the fitness club, which is now Esporta, then was LA Fit. No, before that was Urban Active Fitness. They've been bought out a few times. No disrespect. Don't sue me. Seriously, you're awesome. But like, I couldn't get a call back. 30 years old. I have a college degree. I can't get a call back. So I literally had to go into the gym pretending to want a membership to talk to somebody. And they're like, oh, you want it? I was faking. I was lying. I was pretending I wanted. I couldn't afford a membership. I didn't have a job. So I had to literally stop the tour to tell them, no, I seriously need a job. Not getting picked. Some of you have not been picked throughout your life. You've not been picked. There was 3 people up for the job. You made it through 2 levels of interview. They picked somebody else. You've been in the department. Your boss left. They picked somebody else. You just keep not getting picked. It's a weird message to preach at a church because our whole message is that Jesus picks you. It's the whole message. Like, you've heard this sermon if you've been around church. If you were the only one in the world. Right? You've been there. You've been to that church. No, that is the gospel though, right? It's that you get picked. God commended his love toward us. He demonstrated his love toward us in that while we were sinners, Christ died for you. So no, maybe they didn't pick you and they didn't pick you and they didn't pick you, but Jesus picks you. Except these guys. In Mark 3, Jesus is like, you, no, not you. And there was a bunch of people that felt passed over for positions because they were passed over for positions. He didn't pick them. What do you do when you don't get picked? Because, by the way, this not only affects, like when you don't get picked, and by the way, if you're here and you get picked, this is not for you. But when you don't get picked, it affects how you feel about yourself, it affects how you feel about other people, but it can also affect how you feel about God. What's up with this I'm fearfully and wonderfully made stuff? God's got a purpose for my life. You know, we're singing all these songs about, wait till you see what God has. Man, he's about to blow your mind, something like that. And so you're talking, but I keep not getting picked. What do you do when you're not getting picked? I'm gonna give you some stuff to wrestle with. I'm gonna give you some questions to pray about. I'm not gonna close the loop for you. I'm gonna open the loop today, and then you and God can close it together, because you might be sitting next to someone who's also not getting picked, and your action step and their action step might be different. So I'm gonna give you prayers to pray and questions to ask, and then you and the Lord will figure out the action, okay? But I wanna set a foundation, a couple things. Number one, I think one of the catastrophic mistakes that we make that often causes us unnecessary disorientation is that we confuse purpose and significance with rank and recognition, okay? Purpose and significance, we confuse those things with rank and recognition. And you have to understand that purpose and significance are not necessarily equal to rank and recognition. And it's really hard to unlearn that, because we live in a culture with cultural pressures, and we live in systems and environments where there is a hierarchy, and there is an org chart, and there is a pay scale, pay structure, and certain people get to park in this lot and then others don't. And then certain people work on this floor and others don't. And there's a podium, first, second, third, fourth, fifth. You didn't even get on the podium. And so we have all that, and you've got to learn how to live in that without allowing that to demoralize you or to actually calibrate you to thinking that way, that the only way I can be successful, the only way I can be significant or live a life of purpose is if I'm ranked highly and I'm highly recognized. You got to delink the two of those things, because you're going to find that God isn't as interested in your rank and your recognition as maybe your bosses or the environment that you live in, that you gotta work outside of that system. And it's so easy to get sucked into it. I get sucked into it with the best of them. My wife and I went and did a mud run one time. Anybody ever done one of these mud runs? We go do a mud run. We get to the mud run. My wife has done mud runs. I hadn't done a mud run. I get there and there's people, this guy walking around, he's got a green headband. My wife's like, oh man, that guy's got a green headband. I was like, okay. I was like, you want a green headband? We could go to the sporting goods store. I'll get you one right now. She's like, no. The green headband means he's done this 4 times. I was like, really? I was like, yeah. I was like, what does the purple headband mean? She's like, it's like, what about the orange one? I see somebody with an orange one. Oh, that means they finished in the top 10. I'm like, well, I'm gonna get me an orange headband. I'm no bottom feeder, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm gonna, whatever I gotta do, I'm gonna get me an orange headband. Next thing I know, I'm ready to give my life to mud runs so I can get me an orange headband so I can wear that thing around and stick out like a sore thumb. Oh yeah, you want to? Yeah, top 10. I mean, we laugh about it, but you got it at work, and you got it in your society, and we got it in our culture. And so often we end up getting upset with God because, Lord, within this structure, how come you're not maneuvering me in a significant enough way, the places I want to be? And so we think maybe that God doesn't value us. You got to delink. You've got to delink significance and purpose with rank and recognition, and to know the difference between the two. What I want to give you here is the tension to wrestle with, because I think sometimes we preach 2 + 2 = 4, and sometimes those principles are applicable, but often it's something that we need to sit in and ask ourselves, okay? And so here's what I'm gonna give you. The first question: when you don't get picked for something, and it doesn't fit you, I want you to ask this question. The first question is this, does this not fit because it's not designed for me? Or does it not fit because I haven't grown into it yet? That's an important question to ask. Does this not fit because it's not designed for me? Or does it not fit because I have not grown into it yet? This is really, really important to pray and wrestle and allow the Lord to give you revelation, because these are two completely different action steps, depending on that answer. So we would applaud somebody who had the self-awareness and the self-confidence to see something prestigious or something that appeared to be significant and would say, I'm not gonna do that because I'm not designed for that. That's not part of my divine design. God didn't make me that way to do that thing, so I'm not even gonna go for it. I'm not gonna be jealous of those who are. I'm gonna celebrate those who do, but that's not my design, so I'm not going there. We would call that self-awareness. Sometimes it's hard to get there, by the way, when you feel the emotional feelings of rejection of not getting picked. So for some of you, when you don't get picked for something important, or it feels like, God didn't select me for that or whatever, you end up feeling all of those rejection feelings. And the feelings of rejection are so visceral and deep that it keeps you from actually having the presence of mind to step back and go, it's probably really not a good fit for me anyway. Why am I craving that so badly? Why am I coveting that position? Why am I trying to get there? The reality is, if I got there, it would have a orange headband or something, or I'd be in the hierarchy, or I would be admired, respected, whatever. But is it really my design? Am I really designed for that? To be able to step back and actually really look at how God has made you. And this is a tough one, man. You got to sit there for a minute, because think about this, these two competing ideas. One is we would admire someone that says, that's not designed for me. But then we would also say, you're a work in progress. So don't just disqualify yourself from stuff because it doesn't fit. Maybe it doesn't fit yet. It may not be a design issue. It might be a development issue. That if you'll stay with it, you're not going to know unless you stay with it. Because we would say, on one hand, accept who God's made you to be and accept who you are. But on the other hand, we would say, don't just accept who you are. You're not who you're going to be, right? We would say both of them. Matthew, the writer of Matthew, we're introduced to him in Mark 2 when he's a tax collector, but we're really introduced to him in the book of Matthew when he's an author. He wasn't ready to be an author, a gospel writer in Mark 2. He was a work in progress. The role didn't fit him in Mark 2, but it wasn't a design issue, it was a development issue. So I don't have an answer for you, because if it's not your design, if it's not your design, the answer is get out. No shame, it's not for you, it's for somebody else, God bless. If it's a development issue, then you've got to stay in it because it doesn't fit you yet. You remember when you were a kid and you were growing? You ever take a growing kid shopping? You don't buy them what fits them, right? Your 13-year-old son goes in, tries something on. He's like, oh, this is great, it fits like a glove. You're like, no, that's not it, take it off. I work too hard for my money. We're gonna size up. Depending on how fast he's growing, you might size up twice, okay? We're gonna get you something you can grow into, okay? How many of you, come on, how many of you remember? Come on. Remember this? Some of you need to be reintroduced to this. But no, remember how good this felt when you were a kid? You were a growing kid. You showed up at the shoe store, you were like, I've been eating my Wheaties, baby. Yeah, I've been sleeping good. I've been working out. Go ahead. They get on, oh man, wasn't that good though? They'd be like, oh, you're an 8. You're like, dang right, I'm an 8. They start saying stuff to your mom like, what are you feeding that kid? You're like, yeah, Miracle Grow, baby. Yeah, I'm at it. Wait till you see me next time. So you take those size 8s and you're playing ball and you're tearing up the soles, and now it's time, we gotta go back to Foot Locker. You show up at Foot Locker, you're like, yeah, I'm back. They're like, ooh, you're a 10 and a half now. You're like, you ain't seen nothing yet. I still got some growing left to do. And they kept moving. Remember how good it felt to grow? Remember how good it felt to size up and you grew into it? Here's what happens. We know how our bodies work. Our bodies are on a bell curve. You're born, you grow, you plateau, you decline, you die. That's a summary of what happens. I know, it's blunt, but that's just what happens. And hopefully it's not a shocker. That's what happens. Paul says in 2 Corinthians, though our bodies are bell curving, our bodies are plateauing and declining, our spirits are being renewed every day. So at some point, I knew I was an 11. It's been a long time since I've been on one of these. Chances are you hadn't seen one of these in decades, dude, because you already know what size you are. And once you know what size you are, you just buy that same size every single time. And of course, it's true for your foot. It's true for your clothing, but it should not be true of your attitude. It should not be true of your mindset. It should not be true of your spirit. It should not be true of your conflict skills. It should not be true of how you do relationship, of your faith, of your spiritual life. You should be renewed every day. You should be sizing up. But often we go, oh no, I'm an 11. And you put something on, it doesn't fit. The problem is it's time for you to grow again. Get this back out, size back up. Your body quit growing, your spirit is new. You need to grow in. I know I'm talking to somebody 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, 70 years old. God's trying to do a new thing in you. Don't just go, it doesn't fit me. This doesn't fit me. You got to grow into it. It might not be a design issue. It might be a development issue. So don't fall into this like this is the old school, this is old time, long time ago, I quit growing. For some of you, it's time God wants to reignite some growth. You gotta size up, put something on, it doesn't fit yet. It might not be designed for you. If it is not designed for you, walk away. But if it is, you just need to develop into it, you gotta stay with it. Look at this. This is a good one here. Okay, think about this now. Go to Acts 1. If you have your Bible, go to Acts 1. Watch this. In Mark 3, bunch of people. Jesus picks 12. Okay, picks 12. Names them. Simon, Peter, Andrew, James, John, Philip, Thomas, Matthew, James the son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon, Judas, Bartholomew. 12 of them. Okay? What happens? Bunch of people, keep reading, bunch of people leave. Oh, I didn't get picked. I didn't get picked, so I'm out of here. By the way, oftentimes when you don't get picked, your real motives are revealed. I didn't get picked. Didn't get the apostle role. Didn't bother to ask why. I just didn't get it. Now I'm hurt. I'm out. They leave. A bunch of people leave, but a bunch of people stay. And they stay through thick and thin. They stay when Jesus is teaching stuff that they don't understand, but they stay. They stay when Jesus gets arrested. They stay when Jesus gets crucified. They stay when Jesus resurrects. In between Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection, one of his disciples became so hopeless and grieved that he took his own life, Judas. So they go from 12 to 11 apostles. Jesus in Acts chapter 1 ascends. And look what happens in Acts chapter 1 after he ascends. It says in verse 12, the apostles returned to Jerusalem, the Mount of Olives, a distance half a mile. When they arrived, they went up to the upstairs room of the house where they were staying, and here's the name of those present. And then it names everyone except Judas, so 11 out of 12. Verse 14, they all met together and were constantly united in prayer, along with Mary, the mother of Jesus, and several other women, and the brothers of Jesus. Verse 15, during this time, there were about 120 believers were together in one place. So it gives us a number, about 120. So think back, Mark 3, bunch of people. Jesus picks 12, bunch leave, 120 stay. 120 make it to Acts 1. Watch this, verse 21. They decide to pick Judas's replacement. We must now choose a replacement for Judas. Now look what it says next. Don't miss this. Here it is. Here's the punchline. We must choose a replacement for Judas from among the men who were with us the entire time we were traveling with the Lord Jesus. A new opportunity has emerged. Somebody was designed for it in Mark 3, but wasn't ready for it. And a bunch got so down and out that they left the crew, but a few stayed. And now the opportunity has reemerged in a new season. Listen, think sowing and reaping. Some of you are reaping right now things you don't like. If you don't like what you're reaping right now, start sowing differently right now. Because there's gonna be a new opportunity down the road. You're not ready for this one, but do you wanna be ready for the next one? A group of people decided not to leave. So in Mark 3, they weren't developed enough. In Acts 1, they were. So this says this, verse 22. We want someone from the time that he was baptized by John till he was taken away from us. Whoever is chosen will join us as a witness of Jesus' resurrection. New opportunity. Verse 23. They nominated 2 men, Joseph called Barsabbas, also known as Justus, and Matthias. Watch this, they pray, verse 24. Oh Lord, you know every heart. You see what we don't see, show us which of these men you have chosen. Jesus didn't choose them in Mark 3. God's about to choose them in Acts 1. What kind of life you want to live? Verse 25, as an apostle to replace Judas for this ministry. It's about to be somebody's time. For he has deserted us. Judas has deserted us and has gone where he belongs. Verse 26, so they cast lots and Matthias was selected to become an apostle with the other 11. Matthias is the unsung hero. Matthias is the guy that didn't leave in Mark 3. Some of you are so down because you feel so offended and you feel so hurt and you feel so crushed by the fact you didn't get picked that you've lost energy, you've lost steam, you've lost hope. You're not working hard anymore. You put it down. Why? Because I feel so, I'm upset at God and everybody else because I didn't get picked. And Matthias said, I wasn't ready today, but I'll bet I'll be ready when the time comes. And because of that, he stuck around and he kept developing. And in due season, the opportunity reemerged and God picked him. That can be you. You don't like what you're reaping right now? Sow differently. I think this is another tension we have to wrestle with is, depending on who you are, I think both nature and nurture, when it comes to our lives and our work and our purpose and everything we do, I think you need to ask yourself, am I taking my work too seriously or not seriously enough? Am I taking it too seriously or not seriously enough? I think sometimes we can take ourselves and our work and our purpose too seriously. That you got the weight of the world on you and you think everything rises and falls on you. And so I think if you take it too seriously, when you don't get picked, it creates such a weight on you. It's so overwhelming and discouraging that it's hard to be buoyant and to bounce back. But I also think it's a mistake when you do get picked to take it too seriously. I'm an apostle. I was picked. You see that big crowd of people? He only picked 12. I don't know if you were counting, but they only picked 12 and I'm one of them. Well, hold on a second now. Be careful you don't take all of this too seriously, because look what's about to happen. Jesus picks 12. And pretty soon he's going to isolate 3 in his inner circle. Bartholomew's not there. Thomas is not there. Andrew's not there. Andrew was part of the original 4, Peter, James, John, and Andrew. And yet at a certain point, Andrew doesn't get pulled into the inner circle, into the executive team. So Jesus, when he goes in to heal Jairus' daughter, he goes, Peter, James, John, come with me. Andrew's like, oh, cool. Jesus is like, no, Andrew, not you. Peter, James, and John. Andrew's like, I thought we were the Fab Five. No, we're not. You're out. For what? You're out. When Jesus goes to the Mount of Transfiguration, Peter, James, John, Andrew, where am I at? You're not invited. Peter, James, John, Andrew to the Garden of Gethsemane for the crucifixion. No, Andrew, not invited. If you take it too seriously, when you get picked for the 12, what happens the next round? You don't get picked for that. And before you get too jealous of Peter and the boys, keep reading in the book of Acts. It's gonna be Paul's time. Peter, you're gonna need to step aside. In fact, at one point, they're gonna do like this, And the favor of God and the mantle is gonna follow Paul, and Peter is gonna become secondary. My whole point is this: your life's really important, but it ain't that important. But it's real important, but it's not that important. But it's important, but not that important. You gotta sit in the tension. You gotta take it very seriously, but don't take it too seriously. Last night, my cousin came in town, stayed the night at my house. He got in around bedtime. He comes in, he's from Virginia. He comes rolling in, he's like, "You got a word tomorrow?" I was like, "Yeah, man, I think I got something." He's like, you gonna give it to him, man? You gonna give him a good word?" I was like, no, I'm not sure. I was like, I think so. I said to him, I said, his name's Josh. I said, "Hey, Josh," I said, "You remember what I preached third week of February 2015? He goes, "No." I said, "Me either." I said, "I'm gonna go give him my best tomorrow, but most of them are gonna forget what I said by lunch." That's reality. Some of you are gonna go to lunch and be like, "What did the preacher preach about?" I don't know, man, something about like a foot measuring thing. I don't even know. I don't have any grandiose ideas that you're gonna remember everything I say. I don't remember everything I say. Third week of February 2015, none of you know what I said. But you know what? Somebody got rocked that day. Somebody, it was their day. Somebody, second, third week of whatever I just said, I don't even remember, third week of February 2015 was their day. It was a divine intersection. The Holy Spirit was messing with them, working on them. It was an interception. It was a game-changing day. Somebody got their day. And I went in that day feeling the purpose and the significance of what I was gonna do. The reality is I don't remember what I talked about. Most of you wouldn't even know. It had made no impact. You didn't even listen. But to somebody, it was something. You gotta sit in the middle of that. What you're doing is really, really important, and you ought to take it seriously. Treat it like life and death. Whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. Treat it like it's the most important thing on planet Earth. But don't walk out with the weight of the world on you. Because here's the thing. If you overvalue it or you take it too seriously, when you don't get picked, you go into the valley of despair. But when you do get picked, if you take it too seriously, you won't know when to let go when it's somebody else's time. Won't even know who you are without it. So you got to sit in that tension. Are you taking it too seriously or not seriously enough? I'll give you this last thing. When you think about your passion and your drive, are you mostly driven by the results of the work or by the nature of the work? By the results of the work or by the nature of the work? Think about that. All the way back in Mark 3, Jesus picked a group of people based on the nature of the work. Calling 12 of you to be apostles. Cool, man. What does that mean? You're gonna be my emissary. Well, what's the work look like? We're gonna be on boats a lot. So we call it fishermen. We're gonna be hated a lot. We call it a tax collector. He's pulling a team together based on the nature of the work. And I think oftentimes we get so fixated on the nature of the results or the results of the work, which, hey, be results. I'm a results guy. You should care about results. But also to understand that God has designed you and wired you for results, but also to enjoy and to love the nature of the work. I was talking to a guy recently, young cat, 22 years old, and he works in tech. I was asking him about his job. "Man, what do you do?" "Oh, I work in tech." I was like, "Oh man, tell me about it." And he just told me a bunch of stuff. I didn't understand any of it. I had no clue. But he was talking about, his eyes were wide, and I said, 22 years old, I said, sharp guy. I said, "Hey man, you like your job?" He goes, "I love my job." And it shocked me, honestly, the way he said it, because he said it with such conviction. He's like, "I love my job." Didn't hesitate. That's not usually the response I get to that question, frankly. Most of the time I ask people if they like their job, their voice goes up an octave. I'm like, "You like your job?" They're like, it's cool, it's kind of, and this bro was like, from the diaphragm, he's like, "I love my job." So now I got curious, man. I started like quizzing him. I was like, man, what do you love about your job? And like this, the most insightful answer. He goes, I work on a team. When they give us a problem, it's because no one else can figure it out. So they give it to us. He goes, and we never know what to do. And we get it, and none of us know what to do, but we stay with it, and we work together, and eventually we figure it out. And he goes, I just love the aha moment when we figure it out. 22 years old, I said, hey, bro, listen, I don't usually give unsolicited advice to people, but you mind if I hop in? He's like, yeah, man, sure. I said, listen, man, you just stumbled on a beautiful thing, man. The divine design that God's given you, that's part of your quality of life. I said, bro, if they offer you some crazy promotion, double the pay, great office, company car, I don't know what the perks are these days, whatever they want to, you need to find out, are you going to keep being able to do that? Are you going to get that aha? Because that's the nature of the work. Whatever they want to pay you will not make up for your ability to do that. God's put that in you. That provokes you to your best self. So you want to find both things. You believe in the purpose of the work. You believe in the result of the work, but also the nature of the work. Oftentimes, we end up getting passed up for something, maybe that one or the other. We love the nature of the work or we love the result of the work, and for some reason the door didn't open and we're upset with God and we feel bad about ourselves. And the reality is God is moving you towards something where both the nature of the work, this is part of your purpose, this is part of your sweet spot, is that both the nature of the work and the results of the work are things that you deeply believe in to get you in your best spot. Don't shed tears over being passed over something that doesn't fit you right, but you got to wrestle with this. Why am I so upset about being passed over? And why did I get passed over? Was it a character thing? Is it a development thing? Am I confusing rank and recognition with significance and purpose? Was I more attracted to the recognition of that thing than I was to the work itself? What is it? I don't have answers, man. You and God have to close the loop. Bring these questions to him. But for some of you, here's what I'm gonna tell you. The fact you didn't get picked is the best thing that ever happened to you. Because the fact you didn't get picked kept you from being distracted by the next promotion. And it's in the demotion or the delay or being passed over that's gonna cause you to bring this to the Lord and to get to some real peace, some real clarity, to come out of the disorientation. But let's allow God to speak to us. I'm gonna invite you to stand up on your feet. Whatever you may be walking through in terms of disappointment, whatever season you may be walking through, let's bring all this to God right now and allow him to speak to each one of us.